Viking times, a thing was a gathering, a place where leaders and warriors could meet and talk.
But today, we're going to be doing a bit of a Q&A about that JORVIK Viking Thing podcast.
And I'm your host. My name's Gary, and I am joined by
Miranda, one of the hosts of that JORVIK Viking Thing podcast.
And Lucas, the other host of that JORVIK Viking Thing podcast.
So let's get stuck in. I've got 10 good questions here today. I'm going to put it to the podcast hosts, and hopefully they'll answer some of your burning questions that you've had before. Are you both ready for this?
Definitely.
I think so.
Yeah.
It may not be common knowledge, since the duo of Miranda and Lucas is definitely what springs to mind when you think of that JORVIK Viking Thing podcast. But in the beginning, Lucas, you were not really a permanent host of the podcast. You did in fact start on the first episode and then you weren't in it for quite some time. Why did that happen? Like, what changed? Why did Lucas then come back?
Well, the podcast was kind of initially intended to be like a limited series. It was something that we could do to engage with the audience from the JORVIK Viking Center whilst we were locked down. It was just meant to be kind of a COVID thing. But it became really popular, and we suddenly had to do this regular series of episodes, kind of and I suppose that's where you came in, really, isn't it?
Yeah, Miranda needed someone to bounce off of, I think, for conversations. As lovely as her voice is, her monologuing for 45 minutes.
No one wants to hear that, no.
Might get a little bit old, yes.
I do think actually you came back into the podcast with one of your famous sort of saga episodes. I think it was Draugr, Saga of the Viking Undead. I think that's where you started coming back into it. And then
Yes. Because before then I had done some video versions of sagas for that JORVIK Viking Thing, the video version, not the podcast version. So yeah, we decided to adapt that. Miranda asked me to find a spooky Halloween story that might be suitable. So
and he basically said, like Viking zombies. And I was like, yes, just like Viking zombies, yeah.
From this book on my desk.
So are we saying that Draugrs are Viking zombies, or are they not Viking zombies? Or are they something else?
They're zombies and ghosts and vampires.
Not to get too confusing or technical. Yeah.
Okay, so they're the everything of all monsters, but called a Draugr.
Yeah. But he helped pitch in with the first kind of saga that we did, and from there, I mean, he just took over quite a lot of the research, helping me with that, and it was just kind of natural to fold him into the hosting as well.
The podcast has been the platform for a variety of interviews for a different hosts of people, including the founder of York Archeological Trust, Dr. Peter Adamman, and other academics from across the globe, including an eel historian, a few celebrities such as Terry Derry. Who has been your most sort of memorable or favorite guest on the show?
I mean, that's a bit of a tricky one. They've all been absolutely incredible. But I think mine personally has to be one that you just mentioned, the surprised eel historian, Dr. John Wyatt Greenlee. He is an eel academic. He specializes in the use of eels as currency in the Middle Ages. He was just so fun.
It was very weird but amazing, wasn't it? Yeah, that episode.
It was just a topic that I don't think either of us knew anything about. I found him from Twitter, of all places, and I just kind of thought that we had to have him on the podcast.
And so you found him, reached out to him and went, hey, you're an eel historian, Vikings loved eels, and so we'd really like you on the show.
Yeah, and he was very keen, and he was such a nice guy to talk to. He knew his stuff. It was incredible. Yeah, I think he must be my favorite. Yeah.
Okay. Well, same question for you, Lucas. Who do you reckon is your most memorable or favorite? Or
this might be a technicality, but we did do an episode on Barley Hall, a shock horror not Viking episode, last summer, and technically Dame Judi Dench appeared on that episode.
True.
She just doesn't know it.
She doesn't know that she was on there. Yeah.
It was from a recording, I don't know, the year 1993 that she did for York Archeological Trust, and we thought, we might recycle this, I think, for our podcast episodes.
Why do we have a recording of Dame Judi Dench? Like, what's the whole reasoning behind that?
Barley Hall, our medieval townhouse attraction, back in the 90s, you'd get an audio guide when you visited, and Judi Dench was the voice of Lady Joan Thweng, who was the lady of Barley Hall. So you could hear her ordering her servants about and telling people what to do.
Okay, so you've now taken the audio and placed it into the podcast.
Yes.
We did, yeah. So we
From the cassette tape or whatever it was on.
Yeah. So we took that audio when we wanted to do an episode about Barley Hall. It's such an amazing place with an incredible history. And someone mentioned to us, oh, it's a shame that we don't use that audio tour anymore. And I was like, I think we can find a way to do that. So yes, a technicality, but I think it's a good one.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I'll allow it.
If she wants to come on for real,
Yeah, there we
we're
go.
always open to that.
You heard that, Dame Judy Dench. That JORVIK Viking Thing podcast would really like you on the show. So if you could just drop us an email, we'll get you sorted. Following on from this theme, there are many people out there, celebrities or academics, people that you might like to have on the show. Can you name one or two people that you thought before that you would really like on there? And we can't take Dame Judy Dench because we've already covered that.
Well, we do have a guest coming up in an upcoming episode who people might be familiar with. We wanted him on for a while. A YouTube academic, really into the Old Norse language and mythology. I don't know if we should name them quite yet, because that might spoil it.
We'll leave it at that. We'll leave that as a little bit of a teaser.
Yeah. You're being a bit cryptic. Can we get the name? But if you're saying we're going to have it as a teaser, maybe people in the comments below can try and guess who they think it is.
Yeah.
But, okay, that's interesting. Look forward to the episode. Same for you, Miranda?
I think for me, it would be really cool to have Neil Gaiman on, right? Because he's written about Norse mythology. And I come from more of the pop culture side of Vikings, and so it would be really cool to be able to incorporate that sort of thing. So I'd love if he could come on.
Okay, that's kind of cool. So from the whole pop culture side of it all, so we wouldn't want like a Hemsworth.
I mean, oh God, if Chris Hemsworth insists on coming on the podcast, I suppose we can find a place for him.
Well, there we go. I'm not going to do a shout out for that one, but maybe it might happen. You don't know.
Fingers crossed.
Next question. The most recent airings of the podcast is actually a 5-part saga. I believe it's called the Saga of the Volsungs. I'm just going to double check. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. Well done.
I'm not going to spoil anything about the episode. I haven't listened to it myself yet, episode 1 yet. I will do that.
What?
Outrageous.
No wonder our download figures are so low.
I was actually going to wait for all 5 to come out, listen to it all in one go. I'm like a Netflix.
Binge
Okay.
them, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for this? Why you love to cover so many sagas or do them in episodic sort of, big readings?
I mean, this is the first time we've kind of done like a series of them. We did a little bit with Ragnar Lothbrok. We did like an epic saga, and then the following episode was kind of us chatting about like the breakdown of the saga. But we've not really done a multi-part one before, so this is new territory for us. Fingers crossed it works out. I really like them because a lot of, like I mentioned, the pop culture, a lot of the Viking pop culture is actually really rooted in these stories, right? So I just mentioned the saga of Ragnar Lothbrok. I mean, the original Vikings from the History Channel, that's that story. So to be able to engage with our audience and tell them how the original story went and how actually this guy that has this really cool haircut on TV, his name literally means like hairy trousers. Like how silly is that, So I really like that we can say, okay, yes, here's the story that you know, but here's the actual story,
Anything you want to add to that, Lucas?
I think a lot of our fans do like those particular episodes. It's a
Yeah.
lot of effort to make them, so I do hope they like them. And the sagas and the myths, I think you've got to take them with a pinch of salt, of course, because there's weird stuff in them.
Wait, was he not going around wearing hairy trousers? Are you kidding me?
I mean, that's the least fantastical part of that story.
I am right in saying that they're meant to protect him from a dragon?
Yeah,
Yes.
obviously.
So
Yeah.
the dragons are real as well, aren't they?
Our most recent one, there was that incident with the wolf and the honey.
Yeah.
There's some weird stuff that happens in these stories, but there's a lot we can learn from them, even if they are slightly bonkers. So if you're into learning about the Vikings, about the culture of that time period, you can learn about their values, for instance, the role of women in society, the social hierarchy from these bonkers stories of dragons and strange fashion.
I was actually going to ask about, is there a wealth of knowledge that you can dissect from these sagas? But you've basically just covered that, so I'm going to move on to actually my next question. It may not be known, but that JORVIK Viking Thing podcast is a production brought to you by York Archeological Trust. the organisation behind some of York's most famous archaeological excavations, such as the Coppergate excavation. How important is it to do these episodes on the archaeology?
Yeah, well, archaeology, of course, for the Viking Age in particular, is pretty much the main way we learn about life in that period. Literature is quite scarce for the early medieval times in Northern Europe. And of course, archaeology is the reason why JORVIK Viking Centre even exists at all. I think if the Coppergate dig had never happened, we'd be doing something like, you know, that Iberacum Roman podcast or something instead. So it's always worth coming back home to the archaeology. It's great to do these episodes where, you know, we'll be talking about kings and queens in Scandinavia or about, you know, dragons and monsters in stories in Iceland. But we need to come back a little bit closer to home sometimes, I think, and talk about some of the stuff that only we have really in our collection. It's pretty cool that not only is there stuff like the sock and the big poo that everyone's heard of, but these episodes have let us highlight some of the much smaller, the nitty-gritty of the collection, haven't they?
Yeah, I really love like when it's just you and me talking about the artifacts in our gallery, because like you say, sometimes they're things that only we have or have evidence for. But it is kind of a difficult like platform to talk about archaeology on. So it's usually us describing, oh, and then there's a bear claw and it's approximately this big and it's on this shelf. So we definitely recommend that if at all possible, people come and actually see the archaeology themselves and maybe have us in their ears as they do it.
So do you feel like using the podcast to talk about the archaeology makes the Viking Age more tangible to the listener?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because like you were saying, you know, that obviously pinch of salt with some of these sagas and stuff, but it just feels like it really highlights that these are real people that we were talking about. If we talk about their shoe or their poo, like you were saying, or the toys that their children were playing with, things like that, it really highlights that they're people just like we are.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think probably my favorite, most mundane thing like mundane is in like
every day, yeah.
There's nothing mundane at JORVIK Viking Centre.
Obviously. The most like everyday sort of mundane thing that's on display in JORVIK, which I find fascinating, is the frying pan.
Yeah.
I always think that's so, it's a frying pan. You look at it, it's a frying pan, and it just looks like a cast iron skillet, but this thing's like 1,000 years old.
Yep. And like it's got repairs and stuff on it, which it just feels very
Poisonous repairs.
poisonous
lead.
repair.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say that bit. The lead probably killed them. It's fine. But it just.
And that's why the Vikings are gone.
Yep. It brings it home, doesn't it? You know, it really makes you kind of relate to them. Yeah.
I think talking about the archaeology is definitely an important part. And is there any plans for any further archaeological episodes coming up?
Barely scratched the surface, I think.
I know, yeah. I mean, we definitely have at least a fair few more episodes where we just talk about the artifacts in our galleries and stuff. But recently, you actually mentioned to me that there was a second Coppergate dig.
Yeah, a little one.
A mini
little
Coppergate
one.
dig.
Yeah.
And I'm very keen to talk about that.
I do not know this.
It was, I think you said it was like in the basement of one of the shops or something.
Something like that, yeah. I can't quite remember the exact details.
We haven't researched it yet.
There are so many little digs all over York that have happened, loads of which have brought up Viking Age, Anglo-Scandinavian objects. So what you see on display in the JORVIK Viking Centre is the tip of the iceberg, really.
So I'd really like to get into more of the Viking digs that we've conducted, you know, like we've said, the Coppergate one informed us, but all of these other ones are going to kind of help us get a clearer picture.
Oh, I look forward to the episode on Coppergate 2.
Yeah.
The return. So this one's a bit more of an open-ended question to other archaeological units or heritage sector organisations or museums. If you were to give some advice to another museum or heritage sector organisation wanting to set up their own podcast, what advice would you give them?
I mean, for me, it would definitely be don't expect like amazing success and to be a great podcaster from the get-go. There was such a learning curve initially. I mean, like you mentioned at the top, it was mainly just me doing it at the beginning, and I had to kind of teach myself how to use the actual technology to edit and stuff, but like learn how to research a little bit and stuff, which is why I'm very thankful that Lucas is here now. But it's so much more work than you'd expect it to be. So don't expect it to be super easy, and don't expect to be amazing, and just be really grateful that people want to engage at all, you know. I think that would be the biggest one for me.
I think research what type of equipment you need and whether it's actually any good as well. I think we're on microphone number 4
3 or 4,
now.
yeah.
Microphones are expensive,
They
I've
are
discovered as
expensive.
well. So read the reviews on Amazon before you buy any equipment for podcasting, and find a decent space to record as well. We, of course, we were in this lovely archaeological headquarters, which was not built with a podcast studio in mind many decades ago. So try to find a space where people aren't going to be slamming doors and having meetings immediately outside your door.
Yes,
It's taken us a
definitely.
while to find a decent spot.
Yes.
But we have it now, thankfully.
We do. I mean, and even just the microphone, I look back on it fondly now, but there was a time we had to re-record an episode, 3 times?
Yes.
In order to get decent audio because the microphone kept turning off and stuff. So thankfully we do have a slightly higher tech operation now. But yeah, you're right. Invest if you want it to be successful.
And I'm sure the audience out there really appreciate it as well, since if they've stuck with you from the beginning, they would have heard the actual audio progression, the quality getting better.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I touched on it briefly at the start of this interview. So it's both of you are the core hosts of that Your Viking Thing podcast. But sometimes there are different people intertwined into the episodes. You've got voice actors, special guests. On the whole subject of voice actors, they help to dramatize and bring tales of myths and legends to life. Notably, in the most recent season, you've got a 5-part saga going on. But who are these voice actors and where do they come from? Like, is there a place where you source them from?
I mean, we're not necessarily bringing in actors or anything like that, but we are very lucky that the people that we work with are very supportive of what we do. So most of the voices that people hear are actually the front of house staff at museums or the people we share offices with. So it's mainly just the staff. It gives them something a bit new to do, but it also is very helpful to us because in the saga, the Volsungs, we had 27 voices or something like that.
Yeah.
So, a lot of voices, and as much as Lucas and I can maybe try our best to be all of them.
You should have lied and said it's just us.
Just doing all different
voice actors ever, you know?
Her English accent is amazing.
top notch.
Yeah.
As much as I would like to take credit for all of that, we definitely couldn't between us, I think, do 27 distinct voices, but our staff can, and they've brought a lot to it. They're very excited, and I think it shows. I think they do a really good job.
So next time you visit one of our attractions, you might, meet a Viking on the front door, and you'll be like, "Was that Odin who just let us in?" You might buy a ticket on the front desk, be like, "Was that Queen Sigrid the Haughty just now?" You might phone up our reservations. Is that Freya?
Yep.
Listen carefully next time you visit. You'll hear the voice actors from our staff.
Is there any particular voice acting that we should be looking forward to then in the new series, Saga of the Volsung? Is there a particular character who we is just an absolute gem?
I feel like our answer is probably going to be the same, right? Odin.
Yeah, lovely, creepy Odin.
Like Adam, who's one of our Vikings, he does such a great job. We've had him on before. He did our Ragnar episode?
Yes.
He did, yeah. And so we knew that he would do a great job, and we approached him to do Odin, and oh my goodness, did he commit. But it's my favorite part, which I'm gonna have to put in a bloopers reel or something, is Odin is really dramatically reading this thing. I can't even remember what the line is now. But he burps halfway through, and then in his Odin voice, he says, "Excuse me," and it honestly, he does such a great job. He really commits.
Yeah. Oh, we'll definitely have to get that voice clip. As of the moment, the podcast has been going for more than 2 years, has multiple seasons, over 50,000 downloads, and more than 70 episodes. Did you ever think the podcast would be such a huge success?
I mean, we're actually nearly at 60,000 downloads.
Congratulations.
So yeah, we're doing really well, better than I ever could have anticipated. I mean, you mentioned all the kind of milestones and stuff, but one that I definitely didn't really account for was where our audience would be. Having the JORVIK Viking Center, most of our visitors are from the UK or at least kind of mainland Europe, if and a couple of other more international people sprinkled in. But I mean, our podcast audience is so vast and so international. I mean, the majority at right now is still UK based, but I mean, a solid 35% is in North America, which is crazy, and it's not all just my dad downloading it. And we've got a core of listeners in Australia and Asia and South America and a little bit in Africa and stuff.
Yeah.
but that I did not imagine that. I think that's been the biggest success for me.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because I know from previous projects we've done before, especially for the JORVIK Viking Festival, we did the Vikings and Ireland project, and one of the questions came through from Argentina. I think that's just incredible. Like, I saw that and was like, whoa, that's from Argentina. That's an incredible, incredible thing. Do these surprise you anymore? Like, if you get a question from, like, I don't know, Antarctica or Argentina, do you both go like, wow, it's amazing? Or you're just like, oh, that's kind of cool?
Well, we've not cracked Antarctica yet, but, soon. Maybe Chris Hemsworth will listen to us there. But, I mean...
Does he live there?
I don't know what he does in his spare time, Lucas. I mean, we sometimes go through the list of people who are listening. And the other day you pointed out someone listening in El Salvador. And like, even still, I'm just so blown away by that someone, thousands of miles away wants to listen to us talk about Vikings. I think that's so cool. And I know it's an interesting topic, but the fact that they come to us for that information, I think is amazing, really. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're nearly at 60,000 downloads. And of course, congratulations to you both. And you have got this global, worldwide audience and it's growing. So what's the next big thing for the podcast? What's the next big thing that you really want the podcast to achieve?
Well, we're not quite ready to reveal what our next season will be, I think. We're still very much working through the saga of the Volsungs right now, but, watch this space. We've got some good stuff coming in the autumn.
We're nearing the end of this interview. I thank you both for your time. It's been great finding out even more about yourselves and everything that goes behind the scenes for the podcast. But in a few words, can you sum up the podcast for new listeners and share with them why they should subscribe, why they should listen to your Tales of Vikings?
Yeah, so that JORVIK Viking Thing podcast is all about anything and everything to do with the Vikings. So Viking Age history, Viking Age archaeology, Viking Age stories, Viking themed pop culture, all there on the podcast. We present it in an accessible and understandable way. So if you're a newbie who knows nothing about Vikings, don't worry, we won't bamboozle you with huge amounts of information. And it's great fun, it's entertaining as well. So if you like Vikings, check us out.
For me, kind of getting into the whole Viking history podcast realm, I'm not a Viking academic. So for me, it was really important that this is kind of fun, light history to engage with, which is kind of the basis of a lot of pop culture. So I think if you're kind of even just a little bit interested, you'll find something that you like.
So lastly, if these new listeners, new subscribers want to engage with the podcast, where can they find it? Where can they listen to it?
So the podcast is very easy to find. We're on all of the major podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can also find it through web browser at jorvikthing.com as well. So very easy to find online.
And we have just recently started putting our extensive back catalog, 70-ish episodes, on YouTube. The first 5 just went live, I think earlier this week, and we'll slowly be uploading all of them. So if you don't necessarily engage with podcasts on podcast platforms and things like that, but YouTube is familiar to you, soon you'll be able to find all of our episodes on there. But I definitely have to second looking at our website, because we always kind of try and put like little bits on there about what the next season's like gonna hold and things like that. So if you want a better kind of more in-depth look, our website's a really great place to go.
Just to round things up, is there any last words for your viewers, for your listeners out there that you want to say?
I just want to thank people for listening, to have nearly 60,000 downloads. I think is amazing that 60,000, either one really keen person listening to us 60,000 times or 60,000 individual people. I just think it's amazing that people want to hear us.
Finally, thank you Miranda and Lucas from That JORVIK Viking Thing podcast. This has been a special behind the scenes interview with them. If you've got any comments for any content you want to see in the near future, any ideas for episodes, please put them in the comments section below. Obviously, like and subscribe to this video. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah,
The
perfect.
BAFTA award-winning podcast.
There we go.
Is there a BAFTA for podcast?
There should be. We will win the first one.